The Senate will come to order. Ms. Cole, please call the roll.
Senators Bridges, Buckner, Coleman, Cook, Coram, Danielson,
Excused.
Donovan, Fenberg, Fields, Gardner, Janal, Gonzalez, Hanson, Heisey, Holbert, Jaquez Lewis, Kirkmeyer, Colker, Lee, Liston, Lundeen, Moreno, Pedersen,
Here.
Priola,
Did you not hear me say here? Sorry.
Priola, Rankin, Rodriguez, Scott,
Here.
Simpson, Smallwood, Sonnenberg, Story,
Here.
Winter, Woodward, Zenzinger. Mr. President,
Here. With 34 present, 0 absent, 1 excused, we have a quorum. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate suspend the rules, specifically Senate Rule 1B, for the purpose of an individual other than a senator to lead the pledge.
You have heard the motion. The motion is to suspend the rule, specifically 1B, in order to allow a guest other than a senator to preside by leading the Pledge of Allegiance. This requires a 2/3 majority vote. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes having the motion is adopted. Approval of the journal. Senator Gonzalez.
Gracias, presidente. Muevo que el leer. No, I'm kidding. I move that the reading of the journal of Wednesday, February the 16th, 2022 be dispensed with and that the journal be approved as corrected by the secretary.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes having the motion is adopted. Senate Services.
correctly printed Senate Bills 135, 136, 137, and 138, correctly engrossed Senate Bill 34 and 102, correctly revised House Bills 1170, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, and 97.
Committee reports.
February 16, 2022, Committee on Education, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following Senate Bill 127 be referred favorably to the Committee on Appropriations. February 16, 2022, Committee on Education, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following Senate Bill 88 be postponed indefinitely. February 16, 2022, the Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology has had under consideration and has had a hearing on the following appointments and recommends that the appointments be confirmed. Members of the Pinnacle Assurance Board of Directors, effective January 1st, 2022, for terms expiring January 1st, 2027, Howard Carver, of Silverthorne, Colorado, to serve as a member with experience in management and operation of insurance companies not competing with Pinnacle, reappointed. Jesus Salazar of Denver, Colorado, to serve as an employer whose liability is insured by Pinnacle, reappointed for a term expiring January 1st, 2024. Mal Hale of Denver, Colorado, to serve as an employer whose liability is insured by Pinnacle, occasioned by the resignation of Brad Robert Bose of Denver, Colorado, appointed for a term expiring January 1st, 2026. Andy Rugg of Denver, Colorado, to serve as an employee of an employer whose liability is insured by Pinnacle, occasioned by the resignation of Geraldine Ann Lewis Jenkins of Denver, Colorado, appointed February 16, 2022, Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. Senate Bill 94 be postponed indefinitely. February 16, 2022, Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. Senate Bill 97 be referred favorably to the Committee on Appropriations. February 16, 2022, the Committee on Health and Human Services has had under consideration and has had a hearing on the following appointments and recommends that the appointments be placed on the consent calendar and confirm. Members of the Colorado Commission on the Aging for a term expiring July 1st, 2022. Jacqueline E. Stiff of Centennial, Colorado, serving as a Democrat from the 6th Congressional District, occasioned by the resignation of Ryan James Bermude of Aurora, Colorado, appointed for a term expiring July 1st, 2024. Aaron Smith Berg of Montrose, Colorado, serving as a Republican from the 3rd Congressional District, occasioned by the resignation of Susan Janet Hansen of Montrose, Colorado, appointed. February 16, 2022, the Committee on Finance has had under consideration and has had a hearing on the following appointments and recommends that the appointments be placed on the consent calendar and confirm. Members of the Financial Services Board, effective July 2nd, 2021, for terms expiring July 1st, 2025. Mickey Freeman of Golden, Colorado, to serve as a member of the public with expertise in finance and as an unaffiliated, reappointed. Michael George Hurst of Del Norte, Colorado, to serve as an executive officer of State Savings and Loan Association and a Democrat, reappointed. Michael L. Williams of Highlands Ranch, Colorado, to serve as an executive officer of a state credit union and Republican, reappointed. February 16, 2022, Committee on Finance. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. Senate Bill 77 be referred favorably to the Committee on Appropriations. February 16, 2022, Committee on Finance. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. Senate Bill 6 be referred favorably to the Committee on Appropriations. February 16, 2022, the Committee on Finance. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. Senate Bill 86 be amended as follows, and as so amended be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation. February 16, 2022, Committee on Finance. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. Senate Bill 107 be referred favorably to the Committee on Appropriations.
Introduction of resolutions.
House Joint Resolution 1002, Representatives Pico and Rich, Senators Heisey and Zenzinger, concerning a request that Congress allow the state of Colorado to conduct an analysis of and possibly move forward on harmonizing the gross vehicle weight for trucks in the interstate highway system in Colorado with that of other state highways.
Transportation and Energy. Introduction of bills.
House Bill 1035, Representatives Young and Bradfield, Senators Janal and Rankin, concerning modernization of the Older Coloradans Act.
Health and Human Services.
House Bill 1036, Representatives Snyder and Soper, Senator Lee, concerning a requirement that certain real estate commission-approved forms specify whether the real estate transaction on which a form is based concerns a land surveyor's inspection of the real estate.
Business, Labor, and Technology.
House Bill 1041, Representatives Davis-Acre and Larson, Senator Janal, concerning restrictions on making public the personal information of protected persons at risk of threats.
Health and Human Services.
House Bill 1071, Representatives Woodrow and Senator Rodriguez, concerning available relief for plaintiffs who prevail in a class action under the Colorado Consumer Protection Act.
Judiciary.
House Bill 1087, Representatives Hooton and Pico, Senators Story and Liston, concerning special district director requirements, benefits, and in connection therewith excluding a special district director from becoming eligible for membership in the Public Employers Retirement Association due to the director's service as a director.
Local Government.
House Bill 1097, Representative Valdez D. and Senator Simpson, concerning the authority of a Board of County Commissioners to file an application for dissolution of a special district with the Special District's Board of Directors and in connection therewith allowing a Board of County Commissioners to consent to dissolution by court order without an election of a special district with no outstanding financial obligations or debt.
Local Government. Third reading of bills consent calendar. Will the clerk please read all the bills listed on third reading of bills consent calendar?
Senate Bill 30, Senators Donovan and Sonnenberg, Representatives McLaughlin and Catlin, concerning the expansion of the Water Resources Review Committee to the Water Resources and Agriculture Review Committee.
Mr. Majority. Proceed, Ms. Cole.
Senate Bill 20, Senators Gardner and Representative Tipper, concerning the addition of court reporters to the list of professionals who may administer oaths. Senate Bill 91, Senators Buckner and Cook, Representatives Harrod and Van Winkle, concerning making non-substantive changes to language and statutory provisions relating to the review of executive agency rules and in connection therewith repealing obsolete and redundant statutory provisions and confirming other statutory provisions to modern drafting practices. Senate Bill 102, Senators Kirkmeyer and Representative Young, concerning increasing transparency concerning programs for youth with intellectual and developmental disabilities who are in out-of-home placements. House Bill 1170, Representatives McCluskey and Senator Moreno, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Corrections. House Bill 1175, Representative McCluskey and Senator Moreno, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Human Services. House Bill 1184, Representative McCluskey and Senator Moreno, concerning funding for capital construction and making supplemental appropriations in connection therewith. House Bill 1185, Representative McCluskey and Senator Moreno, concerning funding for capital construction information technology and making supplemental appropriations in connection therewith. House Bill 1187, Representatives Harrod and Senators Hansen and Rankin, concerning extending statutory deadlines for COVID-19 relief programs within the Office of Economic Development. House Bill 1188, Representatives Harrod and McCluskey, Senators Moreno and Rankin, concerning authorizing money in the ARPA account within the Healthcare Affordability and Sustainability Fee Cash Fund to be used for home and community-based services that are ineligible for a federal match but otherwise authorized pursuant to the Federal American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. House Bill 1189, Representative Harrod and McCluskey, Senators Moreno and Rankin, concerning the extension of the deadlines for training for providers across the state in cross-system behavioral health crisis response as it relates to persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities. House Bill 1190, Representatives Harrod and McCluskey, Senators Hansen and Moreno, concerning a supplemental state payment to urban Indian organizations to address healthcare disparities among the urban Indian community and in connection therewith making an appropriation. House Bill 1192, Representatives Harrod and McCluskey, Senator Moreno, concerning the Colorado Opportunity to Scholarship Initiatives Displaced Workers Grant and in connection therewith codifying the grant and extending a related existing appropriation. House Bill 1193, Representatives Harrod and McCluskey, Senators Hansen and Rankin, concerning adjustments to expenditures from funds dedicated to assisting those impacted by the transition to a clean energy economy and in connection therewith making an appropriation. House Bill 1194, Representatives McCluskey and Ransom, Senators Hansen and Rankin, concerning local firefighter safety resources provided through the Local Firefighter Safety and Disease Prevention Fund. House Bill 1195, Representatives Harrod and Ransom, Senators Hansen, concerning transfers from the General Fund to the Capital Construction Fund. Senate Bill 34, Senators Kolker and Priola, Representative Byrd and Sandridge, concerning measures to counteract the filing of fraudulent business documents with the Secretary of State.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the passage of all the bills on the third reading of bills consent calendar, which includes Senate Bills 30, 20, 91, 102, and House Bills 1170, 1175, 1184, 1185, 1187, 1188, 1189, 1190, 1192, 1193, 1194, 1195, and Senate Bill 34.
Is there any discussion on any of the bills listed on third reading of bills consent calendar? Seeing none, are there any no votes on any of the bills listed on third reading of bills consent calendar? Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask to be recorded as a no on House Bill 1175, House Bill 1184, House Bill 1187, House Bill 1188, House Bill 1190, House Bill 1192, and House Bill 1193. 1175, 84, 87, 1190, 1192, and 1193.
Senator Sonnenberg will be recorded as no votes on the bills listed as requested. Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. My list won't be quite so impressive. Asked to be recorded as a no vote on House Bills 1187, 1192, and 1193.
The Minority Leader will be recorded as a no vote on House Bill 1187, House Bill 1192, and House Bill 1193.
Yeah, hold on just 1 second. We've just got to catch up here.
Senator Lundin.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I have a list of bills I wish to be recorded on a no vote as. I'll read them into the record and then hand the list to the clerk. 1175, 1184, 1187, 1188, 1190, 1192, 1193.
Senator Lundin will be recorded as no votes on those bills and be entered by the clerk. Senator Smallwood.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. I would like to be recorded as a no vote on House Bill 1187 and House Bill 1192.
Senator Smallwood will be recorded as a no vote on House Bill 1192 and House Bill 1187.
You ready?
Are we ready? Are we ready? Okay.
Senator Cook.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wish to be recorded as a no vote on 1187 and 1193.
Senator Cook will be recorded as a no vote on House Bill 1193 and House Bill 1187. Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wish to be recorded as a no vote on House Bill 1187, House Bill 1188, House Bill 1192, and House Bill 1193.
Senator Kirkmeyer will be recorded as a no vote on House Bill 1187, House Bill 1188, House Bill 1192, and House Bill 1193. Senator Liston.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I would like to be recorded as a no vote on House Bill 1175, 1184, 1187, 1192, 1193, 1172, 1173, House Bill 1178, and House Bill 1179.
Clarified, because we've got you turbulence. Let me repeat this. 1172, 1173, 1178, and 1179 are on regular. So you only want to go up to 1193. Okay? Stop at 1193. So go up there and say, correction, these are the ones with the no.
Senator Liston.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do have a correction. Bills will be 1175, 1184, 1187, 1192, and 1193. Thank you.
Senator Liston will be recorded as a no vote on those bills requested. With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 1 excuse, Senate Bill 030 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senator Simpson. Rankin. Heisey. Kirkmeyer. Lee. Winter. Lundin. Gonzalez. Scott. Woodward. Cook. Coram. Smallwood. Priola. Hawkes Lewis. Gardner. Pedersen. Story. Bridges. Buckner.
Thank you.
Members, we have an extensive calendar. Let's get through it. With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 1 excused, Senate Bill 020 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Lee, Gonzalez, Cook, Buckner, Liston, Heisey, Smallwood, Priola, Woodward, Kirkmeyer, Lundin, with a vote of 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Bill 091 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Moreno, Lee, Smallwood, with a vote of 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 1 excused, Senate Bill 102 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Moreno, Zenzinger, Janal, Heisey, Simpson, Woodward, Kolker, Buckner, Winter, Scott, Priola, Lee, Liston, Bridges, Smallwood, Cook, Gardner, the Majority Leader. Please add the President. With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 1 excused, House Bill 1170 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Gonzalez, Priola, Lee, with a vote of 31 ayes, 3 no votes, 0 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 1175 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Gonzalez, with a vote of 31 ayes, 3 no votes, 0 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 1184 is passed. Co-sponsors, with a vote of 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 1185 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Bridges, Gonzalez, Priola, Pedersen, Buckner, Woodward, Lee, Story, with a vote of 27 ayes, 7 no votes, 0 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 1187 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Gonzalez, Lee, Story, Buckner, Winter, Bridges, with a vote of 31 ayes, 3 no votes, 0 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 1188 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Gonzalez, Buckner, Janal, Winter, Lee, the Majority Leader, Hawkes Lewis, Pedersen, Story, Fields. Priola. With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 1189 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Gonzalez, Hawkes Lewis, Buckner, Janal, Winter, Sonnenberg, Fields, Pedersen, Story, Woodward, Priola, Quorum, Simpson. Please add the president. With a vote of 32 ayes, 2 no votes, 0 absent, and 1 excused, House Bill 1190 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Gonzalez, Lee, Hawkes Lewis, Story, Pedersen, Donovan, Fields, Priola, Buckner, Janal, with a vote of 28 ayes, 6 no votes, 0 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 1192 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Bridges, Zenzinger, Winter, Hawkes Lewis, Story, the Majority Leader, Fields, Gonzalez, Kolker, Janal, Buckner. Please add the president. With a vote of 20. Senator Pedersen, do you wish to be recorded as a co-sponsor on House Bill 1192?
Yes, please.
Please add Senator Pedersen as a co-sponsor. With a vote of 28 ayes, 6 no votes, 0 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 1193 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Bridges, Lee, Pedersen, Story, Simpson, Hawkes Lewis, Fields, Winter, Kolker, with a vote of 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 1194 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Bridges, Janal, Lee, Winter, Simpson, Priola, Pedersen, Story, Zenzinger, Sonnenberg, Kolker, Coleman, Gonzalez, Hawkes Lewis, Buckner. Please add the president. With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 1 excused, House Bill 1195 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Sonnenberg, Story, Fields, Bridges, Cook, Priola, Pedersen, Woodward, Liston, with a vote of 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Bill 034 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Gonzalez, Bridges, the Minority Leader, Pedersen, Winter, Lundin, Woodward, Buckner, Kirkmeyer, Smallwood, Gardner. Third reading of bill's final passage. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 054?
Senate Bill 054, Senate Bill 054, Senators Zenzinger and Kirkmeyer, Representative Tone, concerning the addition of a recommendation that a district public school be converted to a community school if the district public school fails to make substantial progress under its turnaround plan.
Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 54 and ask for an aye vote.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is a passage of Senate Bill 054 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? With 34 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, and 1 excuse, Senate Bill 054 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Moreno, the Minority Leader, Woodward, Pedersen, Priola, Rankin, Smallwood, Heisey, Janal, Story, Scott. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 028?
Senate Bill 28, Senators Simpson and Sonnenberg, Representative Roberts and Catlin, concerning the creation of the Groundwater Compact Compliance and Sustainability Fund.
Senator Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 28 on third and final reading and ask for an aye vote.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is a passage of Senate Bill 028 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? With 34 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, and 1 excuse, Senate Bill 028 is passed. Co-sponsors, Mr. Minority Leader, Senators Donovan, Zenzinger, Bridges, Gardner, Pedersen, Scott, Gonzalez, Story, Fields, Lundeen, Cook, Winter, Rankin, Priola, Hawkes Lewis, Liston, Kirkmeyer, Heisey, Coram, Lee, Buckner, Woodward, Smallwood. Please add the president. Will Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 23 lay over to the bottom of the third reading of the bill's calendar.
The motion is that Senate Bill 023 be laid over to the bottom of the third reading of bill's final passage calendar. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed no. The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 23 will be laid over into the end of the calendar. Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1171?
House Bill 1171, Representative McCluskey and Senator Moreno, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Education.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1171 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is a passage of House Bill 1171 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? With 34 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, and 1 excuse, House Bill 1171 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Sonnenberg, Zenzinger, Gonzalez, Story, Pedersen, Donovan, Winter, Simpson, Priola, Janal, Buckner, Lundin. The Minority Leader. Hawkes Lewis. Heisey. Fields. Lee. Kirkmeyer. Bridges. Woodward. Smallwood. Please add the President. Will the clerk please read the title of House Bill 1172?
House Bill 1172, Representatives McCluskey and Senator Moreno, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the offices of the Governor, Lieutenant Governor, and State Planning Budgeting.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1172 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1172 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Mr. Minority Leader. Senators Scott, Lundin, Gardner, Cook, Simpson, Liston, Heisey, Kirkmeyer, Woodward, Priola, Sonnenberg, Smallwood. With 21 ayes, 13 no votes, 0 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 1172 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Hawkes Lewis, Story, members, will you please, members who are wishing to be recorded as a co-sponsor on House Bill 1172, will you please enter your name back into the record? Co-sponsors, 1172. Senators Hawkes Lewis, Story, will the clerk please read the title? To House Bill 1173.
House Bill 1173, Representative McCluskey and Senator Moreno, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Health and Care Policy and Financing.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the passage of House Bill 1173 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the passage of House Bill 1173 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Mr. Minority Leader. Senators Lundin, Cook, Simpson, Liston, Scott, Heisey, Gardner, Sonnenberg, Kirkmeyer, Woodward, Smallwood. Quorum. With 21 aye votes, 13 no votes, 0 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 1173 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Bridges, Pedersen, Hawkes Lewis, Gonzalez, Buckner, Kolker, the Majority Leader, Story, Fields, will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1174?
House Bill 1174, Representative McCluskey and Senator Moreno, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Higher Education.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the passage of House Bill 1174 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1174 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senator Cook, Liston, Sonnenberg, Lundin, Scott, Kirkmeyer, Woodward, the Minority Leader, Smallwood, Heisey, With 24 aye votes, 10 no votes, 0 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 1174 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Zenzinger, Gonzalez, Janal, Patterson, Story, Buckner. Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1176?
House Bill 1176, Representative McCluskey and Senator Moreno, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Judicial Department.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1176 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is a passage of House Bill 1176 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? With 34 aye votes, 0 no, 0 absent, and 1 excused, House Bill 1176 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Gonzalez, Lee, Sonnenberg, Pedersen, will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1177?
House Bill 1177, Representative McCluskey and Senator Moreno, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Natural Resources.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the passage of House Bill 1177 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is a passage of House Bill 1177 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Sonnenberg, Smallwood, Cook, Scott, Lundin. With 29 aye votes, 5 no votes, 0 absent, and 1 excused, House Bill 1177 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Winter, Story, Janal. Will the clerk please read the title, House Bill 1178?
House Bill 1178, Representatives McCluskey and Senator Moreno, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Personnel.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1178 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is a passage of House Bill 1178 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Mr. Minority Leader, Senators Scott, Gardner, Cook, Sonnenberg, Smallwood, Lundin, Liston, Simpson, Kirkmeyer, Quorum, Woodward, Heisey. With 21 aye votes, 13 no votes, 0 absent, and 1 excused, House Bill 1178 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Gonzalez, Senator Pedersen. Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1179?
House Bill 1179, Representatives McCluskey and Senator Moreno, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Public Health and Environment.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1179 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is a passage of House Bill 1179 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Mr. Minority Leader, Senators Heisey, Scott, Lundin, Gardner, Liston, Kirkmeyer, Woodward, Quorum, Smallwood, Cook, Sonnenberg, with 22 aye votes, 12 no votes, 0 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 1179 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Winter, Buckner, Lee, Huckus Lewis, Patterson, Story, Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1180?
House Bill 1180, Representative McCluskey and Senator Moreno concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Public Safety.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1180 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1180 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senator Sonnenberg. Mr. Minority Leader. Senator Smallwood. Scott. Lundin. With 29 aye votes, 5 no votes, 0 absent, 1 excuse, House Bill 1180 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Cook, Winter, Lee, Pedersen, Buckner, Story, Liston, Woodward. Will the clerk please read the title of House Bill 1181?
House Bill 1181, Representative McCluskey and Senator Moreno concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Revenue.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1181 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1181 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Sonnenberg, Heisey, Lundin, Kirkmeyer, Scott, Simpson, Gardner, Cook, the Minority Leader, Liston, Coram, Woodward, Smallwood. With 21 aye votes, 13 no votes, 0 absent, 1 excuse, House Bill 1181 is passed. Co-sponsors. Will the clerk please read the title of House Bill 1182?
House Bill 1182, Representative McCluskey and Senator Moreno concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of State.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1182 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1182 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Sonnenberg, Heisey, Simpson, Scott, the Minority Leader, Lundin, Gardner, Cook, Liston, Kirkmeyer, Woodward, Smallwood. With 22 aye votes, 12 no votes, 0 absent, 1 excuse, House Bill 1182 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Hawkins Lewis, Gonzalez, Winter, Buckner. Will the clerk please read the title of House Bill 1183?
House Bill 1183, Representative McCluskey and Senator Moreno concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of the Treasury.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1183 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1183 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Sonnenberg, the Minority Leader, Scott, Cook, Lundin, Gardner, Heisey, Kirkmeyer, Smallwood, Liston, Priola, Simpson. With 22 aye votes, 12 no votes, 0 absent, 1 excuse, House Bill 1183 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Bridges, Story, Hawkins Lewis, Winter, Woodward. Will the clerk please read the title of House Bill 1186?
House Bill 1186, Representatives Harrod and McCluskey, Senators Hansen and Moreno concerning adjustments to school funding for the 2021-22 budget year and in connection therewith, making and reducing an appropriation.
Senator Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1186 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Senator Lundin.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Yesterday, when we heard this particular bill on second readings, I offered an amendment to the bill. This is a bill about how we fund our schools and provides additional funding. And the amendment that I brought said simply that there is a significant amount of money in the corpus, in the funds that are available, that is available to the districts that are providing services or not providing services to a diminishing number of students. But we didn't have the numbers yesterday. All I could talk with you about was the concept of this idea of funding for phantom students, declining enrollment. Later yesterday, the staff was able to get the figure back to me, and there are 25,000 fewer students in public education this year, the 21-22 year, versus the prior year. That amounts to a $230 million funding to the districts for students that are not in school in those districts. Now, the amendment simply said we should pay great teachers more. We know teachers that have been identified as highly effective, and those teachers should be rewarded for being highly effective. So some quick math. If you figure there's 40,000 student-facing teachers in Colorado, and you assume 20% of them are effective, that would be 8,000 teachers in Colorado that are highly effective. And this $230 million that just kind of disappears into the system, if we turned that around, and if we as the General Assembly, as my amendment yesterday called for us to do, said, you know what, districts, you control your budgets, we don't, but the voice of, the perspective of, the will of the General Assembly is that you in fact pay your great teachers more. We would be, based on that math, bonusing highly effective teachers in Colorado to the tune of about $28,000 per teacher. And it's all funded by the money that goes into what are described as phantom students, declining enrollment, places where we're paying the public school apparatus to provide service to students that don't exist. I say we need to be aware of that. This comes in the nature of a public service announcement as much as anything. We need to be aware of that, and we should do everything we can to put more money in the paychecks of highly effective teachers. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion. Senator Bridges.
Thank you, Mr. President. The challenge that I had yesterday with that amendment, the challenge I continue to have with this, is that as it exists right now, there is very little trust in our teacher evaluation system. This is a conversation that the senator from just north of Colorado Springs and I have had, from Monument, have had many conversations about and continue to have many conversations about. And I think until we have the kind of system that we have faith in from our teachers, our parents, our administrators, until we can actually have a system that has the trust of Coloradans, basing pay on that system is just not the right way to go.
Senator Lundin.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I appreciate so much the dialogue, the meaningful progress. It's incremental that we make, microns and millimeters, I believe, that we move forward in this conversation. That is true, that there is perhaps not a great sense of trust by many of the teachers in the evaluation system. At the same time, we do have a mechanism that has been established, whether perfect or not, that identifies some percentage of our teachers as highly effective. Those teachers deserve to be paid more. All teachers deserve to be paid more, but especially those that are turning in a great result deserve to be paid more. And here's the other thing. There is a question of trust in this evaluation system, confidence in the evaluation system. I would argue that the more important loss of confidence is the loss of confidence that parents and students have over our system of public education. We need to be giving those parents greater authority over their ability to influence what's happening in the classrooms where their children are going to school. So, I enjoy and appreciate so much this conversation. The reality is we must do everything we can possibly do to put more money in the paychecks of teachers, especially those teachers that are highly effective. We must do everything we can to restore confidence to the teachers, but also to restore confidence into the hearts and minds of parents who who are entrusting their children into our public education system. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I didn't bring this up yesterday. I didn't really have to because of the direction that the amendment went. But if I had come down here, I would have pointed out that it was a violation of the title, because this supplemental has to do with the School Finance Act, and we don't actually fund public school teachers in our School Finance Act because that is a local control issue. So again, whereas it might have been a very clever suggestion, I don't feel that it's appropriate for this particular supplemental, simply because it violates the title, because it's not a thing that we actually do within the school finance formula.
Having no further discussion, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1186 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? With 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 1 excused, House Bill 1186 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Zenzinger, Bridges, Simpson, Story, Winter, Buckner, Pedersen, Sonnenberg, Hawkes Lewis, Gonzalez.
I love it. Thanks for joining.
The Majority Leader, Kolker, Janal, Lee, Fields, Woodward, Priola, Kirkmeyer,
PS factor is officially at half of your numbers. 503 is the PS factor after that.
Will the clerk please read the title of House Bill 1191?
House Bill 1191, Representatives Harrod and McCluskey, Senators Moreno and Hawkes Lewis, concerning extending the date by which the Department of Health Care Policy and Financing shall administer the reproductive health care program from January 1st, 2022 to July 1st, 2022.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1191 on third reading and final
Is
passage.
there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is passage of House Bill 1191 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Sonnenberg, Smallwood, Cook, Scott, Heisey, Simpson, Gardner, Woodward, Liston, Lundeen, Kirkmeyer, the Minority Leader. With 22 aye votes, 12 no votes, 0 absent, and 1 excused, House Bill 1191 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Winter, Gonzalez, Kolker, Pedersen, Story, Buckner, Lee, Janal, the Majority Leader. Will the clerk please read the title of House Bill 1196?
House Bill 1196, Representatives Harrod and Esker, Senator Moreno and Pedersen, concerning a study to evaluate pay equity across all state departments and in connection therewith making an appropriation.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1196 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1196 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Mr. Minority Leader, Senators Cook, Heisey, Simpson, Kirkmeyer, Sonnenberg, Liston, Scott, Lundeen, Gardner, Woodward, Rankin, Smallwood. With 21 aye votes, 13 no votes, 0 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 1196 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Gonzalez, Lee, Buckner, Story, Pedersen, Winter, Fields, Kolker, Donovan, Hawkes Lewis, Bridges, Hanson. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Having voted on the prevailing side, Which senator? I move for the immediate reconsideration of House Bill 1191.
The motion is for the immediate reconsideration of House Bill 1191. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted, and reconsideration is granted. Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1191?
House Bill 1191, Representatives Herod and McCluskey, Senator Moreno and Huckes Lewis, concerning extending the date by which the Department of Healthcare Policy and Financing shall administer the reproductive health care program from January 1st, 2022 to July 1st, 2022.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1191 on third reading and final passage, and I appreciate the fact that a no vote means that you think this important program should already be in place.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1191 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Mr. Minority Leader, Senators Scott, Lundin, Gardner, Cook, Liston, Simpson, Smallwood, Priola, Woodward, Coram, Kirkmeyer, Sonnenberg, Heisey. With 20 ayes votes, 14 no votes, 0 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 1191 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Gonzalez, Kolker, Winter, Lee, Pedersen, Story. Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1197?
House Bill 1197 by Representatives McCluskey and Sirota, Senators Moreno and Buckner, concerning the effective date of the Department of Early Childhood and in connection therewith transferring money from the general fund to the Capital Construction Fund, Information Technology Capital Account, and making an appropriation.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1197 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1197 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Mr. Minority Leader, Senators Simpson, Lundin, Scott, Gardner, Cook, Liston, Heisey, Sonnenberg, Kirkmeyer, Woodward, Priola, Smallwood. With 21 aye votes, 13 no votes, 0 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 1197 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Bridges, Gonzalez, Story, Patterson, will the clerk please read the title of Senate Bill? Kolker. Will the clerk please read the title of Senate Bill 023?
Senate Bill 23 by Senators Gonzalez, Representatives Bacon and Gonzalez Gutierrez, concerning prohibiting deceptive tactics during custodial interrogation of a juvenile.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 23 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank everyone who has shared their comments, who has shared their perspectives in regards to this policy. We heard really powerful testimony in committee. And we had a really spirited debate here on Tuesday on the floor. As an elder millennial, this morning, I went and I was thinking deeply this morning when I woke up. I said, how do you rebuild trust when trust is broken? And so being the elder millennial that I am, I went to Google to try to figure it out. And Google told me that once Once trust is broken in the relationship after lying, you have to, 1, get real with yourself, 2, apologize twice, 3, validate your partner's responses and reactions, and 4, commit to truthful living going forward. And colleagues, that's what's at the root of this bill. Part of the solution, as we discuss building trust in our communities that for so long has been broken or harmed or complicated. Part of that solution is honesty. At the root of this policy is the idea that all of our communities across this state will be safer when they can trust in law enforcement. And so Senate Bill 23 says that in the course of interrogating a child in our state, we ask that law enforcement not knowingly use deceptive tactics. Colleagues, I trust in law enforcement to investigate and to solve crimes and to protect and serve, and I trust in them, in their ability to do so without needing to resort to deceptive tactics when they're talking to children. I know that we're going to have a good discussion here this morning, but I just want to start off with that point. And I also just want to add that the supporters of this policy, and that I have tried to be very intentional to not make blanket statements or to not speak in absolutes. And so I look forward to the conversation that we're going to have this morning, and I will ask for an aye vote on Senate Bill 23. Thank you.
Senator Cook.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would ask for a no vote on this anti-law enforcement, anti-public safety, pro-criminal bill, a bill that puts criminals over victims once again. You know, I find it ironic that just a week or so ago, there was a press conference. You might have all heard about it. I'm sure many of you were down there at this press conference where, by golly, you were rallying around law enforcement, saying how much you trust law enforcement, how much you need to give more money to law enforcement. And it was supposed to be a pro-law enforcement rally, or press conference, I should say. And I'm sure, like I said, most of you were there. But then that same day, we had this anti-law enforcement bill, this pro-criminal bill, this bill that puts criminals over victims again. You know, last year, when we had all the anti-law enforcement bills, I said, you know what, we need to change the Chinese New Year, because it was the year of the ox. We need to change it to the year of the criminal. Well, that's continuing on. Now, instead of the year of the tiger, we should call it the year of the criminal, because of bills like this. For those of you who weren't here on seconds and didn't hear some of the stats, this bill is coming out during an epidemic of crime. Crime is running rampant in this state and in this country, and it's because of bills like this. And if you think the crime rate is going to drop because of this bill, you're sadly mistaken. It's going to go up. Here's the percentage of increase, for those that weren't here on seconds, in juvenile crime. Violent crime up almost 19%. Murder, 10.5%. These are juvenile crimes, and that's what this bill is about. Aggravated assault, up 30%, almost 31%. Non-consensual sex offenses, 17%. And if you vote for this bill, you can almost guarantee those numbers are going to increase. I gave a couple of examples on second readings on what would happen if an officer uses a little bit of deception with a criminal, with a suspect. They come in for an interrogation, and the 17-year-old gangbanger that just drove by a high school in Denver, maybe Aurora, and shot 6 people, 6 students, and the officer says, hey, we know you were there. We know you were in the car in that drive-by shooting that shot 6 high school students. And maybe the officer doesn't really know that. And the guy says, okay, yeah, you got me. I was there. That confession would be thrown out. This bill is dangerous. I would ask for a no vote on this bill because sometimes you have to use deception. Not in every case, but sometimes you do. In order to get to the truth. You don't see anything in here about telling juveniles they have to tell the truth because juveniles lie to the law enforcement all the time. Deception is a tool that law enforcement can use. According to the Supreme Court, the United States Supreme Court said it's appropriate. So, colleagues, let's not take an important tool. It's not used all that often, but when it is used, it's to get to the truth of the matter. Again, hypothetical drive-by shooting. In a high school, 6 students shot. And a common tactic for law enforcement is, hey, you know who might be there, but you don't know who pulled the trigger. And you just say, hey, your buddy that was in the car said you pulled the trigger. And that other person might confess and say, yeah, okay, I shot him. I pulled the trigger. And maybe lead them to more evidence or other people. Now that confession would be thrown out. Don't be mistaken if you hear that the people will be prosecuted and tried and found guilty based solely on a confession, because that's not the case. The Supreme Court's also ruled that you have to have more evidence than just a confession. Again, let's not hurt law enforcement. Let's not hurt public safety or victims. A good senator from Denver talked about trust. Again, trust is broken when officers can't solve the case. People expect law enforcement. They watch TV, they watch all these shows, these crime shows, and they think, oh man, this crime could be solved in 60 minutes. 48 if you don't count the commercials. Why isn't my law enforcement, why didn't they solve my burglary? Why didn't they solve my rape case? Why didn't they solve the murder of my child like they do on TV? Doesn't happen that way. That's when trust gets violated or get broken. When law enforcement can't solve cases, or they can maybe solve a case, but the confession is thrown out because they said, hey, we knew you were there when the officer might not have. Again, folks, let's support the victims for once. Let's support law enforcement for once. Let's put victims over criminals for once. So, colleagues, I'd ask for a no vote.
Is there further discussion? Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, we had a good and robust discussion about this bill on second reading, and some improvement was made in amendments. On second reading, I said that this bill was not ill-intended. It is ill-considered. It is important in law enforcement that juveniles be treated differently and appropriately than adult offenders. And so that is the good intention of this bill. But what the bill does in substance is say that any time a law enforcement officer uses deception at all during an interrogation of a juvenile, that makes that confession, if it's made, makes that confession inadmissible, period. And the only way it can ever get in is if the prosecutor can prove by clear and convincing evidence, which is next to beyond a reasonable doubt. It's the civil form of that burden of proof. It's extremely and incredibly high, one that's very difficult to meet. Only if the prosecutor can show that that confession was still voluntary. Now, it's easy to say, and I've had some people say to me, well, the cops shouldn't be able to lie. Well, you use whatever tools you can in terms of interrogation when you have strong suspicion of someone's complicity in a crime. Now, the United States Supreme Court has set standards for custodial interrogations of juveniles, and it places limits, and we ought to train law enforcement, and those limits ought to be observed, and they are workable. Here's the problem with the language of the bill. It will invite the analysis and the parsing out and the fighting back and forth between prosecutor and defense counsel about everything that an officer says to a juvenile during that questioning. Everything. So, as the former sheriff of Weld County says, you have a drive-by shooting. As likely as not, in drive-by shootings in our most challenged neighborhoods where we need public safety the most, that group in the car is a mixed group of adults and juveniles, because the age of adulthood is 18, and so there's a 17-year-old and an 18-year-old and a 19-year-old and maybe a 16-year-old. And maybe there's a confidential informant. It's often the case. Somebody saw them, sort of knows them. There's not certainty on the part of the officer when he or she conducts that questioning. There's not absolute certainty that that person was in the car. Maybe the informant got it wrong. Maybe the informant has his or her own motivations. But there's information. Now, if that officer says, we know you were in that car, is that officer deceiving by saying, I know you were in the car? Well, the officer had pretty good information. Wasn't just asking the question out of the blue. Is that deceptive to say, I know? Does the officer have to say, well, I have some information that you might have been in the car? There's a lot of work for lawyers here. If lawyers frustrate you, they frustrate me. If they frustrate you, it's because of stuff like that. The bill is not in the right place, and that's the reason I'm going to be a no. Not because I believe that excessive tactics on the part of law enforcement are appropriate. I will tell you that law enforcement themselves do not think that those excessive techniques are appropriate because they get you bad confessions and they don't solve crimes. But the way this bill is written, it is not going to improve public safety and trust in law enforcement. It is going to empower those who commit the crimes. It is going to empower them to avoid punishment. Now, members, I have moments when I feel really, really old in this chamber. And one of them is now when I'm going to ask, does anyone remember the summer of '92 in Denver? The summer of violence, at which time Democrat Governor Roy Romer called a special session to deal with the outbreak of gang crime in this city. And one of the problems that had to be dealt with at that time was how do we deal with older juveniles who commit many of the most serious crimes. And why do they? Because their leaders who are 19 or 20 or 21 know if a juvenile pulls the trigger, well, the juvenile gets a different treatment. I told you yesterday in seconds, 17 and 364 days is magic because 18 makes you an adult, and that's a different deal. And they know that out on the street. They're pretty good jailhouse lawyers. They know that. So if you think that juveniles don't commit the kinds of crimes that call for interrogation in custody for the protection of the community, think again. Members, I'd like to see this bill between here and the House and hopefully back here to the Senate improve, but it's not there. It's not there. And when you vote yes on this bill, just understand that one day you'll be asked. You'll be asked, why did you vote for that bill? You know, I'm not known as being a soft on crime legislator. Anybody think I'm a soft on crime legislator? I know. I've been asked by a couple of reporters about bills that I supported when I was in the House that I don't agree with this, but that I supported that are contributing to increased crime. Well, I'll have that discussion with reporters, but if I'm answering for holding the line for all of my sessions, but being at the same time reasonable about how do we reform and how do we do the right thing, do understand this bill is ill-considered. And if you vote yes, you will be responsible for making our communities less safe. And one day someone may ask you, why did you do that? I think very closely about these decisions because they have impact, and they have impact in our communities more quickly, much more quickly than you might imagine.
Would the good senator from El Paso County like to be extended to your next?
Thank you, Mr. President. I will conclude. I ask for a no vote on Senate Bill 23.
Further discussion? Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the good senator from El Paso County for bringing the amendment yesterday, which I think really did improve the bill. And quite frankly, that's how we should be working in this legislature, is collaboratively to come out with the best legislation possible. To add a training component to the bill was really worthwhile. But I stand here to disabuse a mistaken impression that has been left at the well that in Colorado, you require corroborating evidence to convict a juvenile, that you can't do it with a confession alone. That is inaccurate. The Colorado Supreme Court, in the case of People v. La Rosa in 2013, for those legal scholars who want to look it up, it's 293 P. 3rd 567. The Colorado Supreme Court got rid of the so-called corpus delicti rule and said you can convict on a confession alone. So the importance of this bill is that it requires that improperly obtained confessions can be thrown out. Without this bill, a juvenile could be convicted of an involuntary false confession without any further corroborating evidence. And that's a pretty frightening thing. That does not make our community safer, because the perpetrator of the crime is still out on the street. If a false confession is made and a juvenile is convicted based on a deceptively obtained confession, the true perpetrator is on the street continuing to commit crime. So to suggest that this bill is anti-public safety is, I think, an inaccurate characterization, because it lets a guilty person stay on the streets. So keep in mind that a confession in Colorado under the Supreme Court rule is sufficient of itself without any further corroboration. Don't misunderstand. Most convictions, the vast majority of convictions, are not based on one thing, one piece of evidence, one confession. There's usually multiple forms of evidence that result in convictions. But under Colorado, a confession alone will do it. And this bill just requires that that confession be trustworthy, and that if it's not trustworthy, if it's deceptively obtained, it has to be thrown out. And otherwise, that guilty person, that perpetrator, that criminal who committed the act will still be on the streets. That doesn't contribute to public safety. Thanks.
Sarah Cook.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I trust the United States Supreme Court a lot more than I do the Colorado Supreme Court. The United States Supreme Court said you can't convict on just confession alone. I trust them more than the Colorado Supreme Court, but there was a time when a man walked into the Denver Police Department and said, God told me to come in and confess to a murder. And he confessed. They got other evidence. And the Colorado Supreme Court said, oh, that's a coerced confession. Our Colorado Supreme Court said that's a coerced confession because a man came in and said, God told me to confess to this murder. So the case was thrown out. The U.S. Supreme Court wisely said, God's not the government. So God's not bound to the Constitution. That's kind of a ruling our Supreme Court here in Colorado makes. Luckily, they overturned that case. We heard some testimony about this one juvenile that was convicted, I think it was in 2014, before safeguards were in place. There are plenty of safeguards now for the children. I'll tell you some of them. If it's a Class 1 or 2 felony or any sex assault, cameras have to be on videotape. There's body-worn cameras everywhere now. A parent or guardian must be physically present during the interrogation. Both juvenile and parent must waive their Miranda rights. And once raised, prosecution must show by preponderance of the evidence that that confession was voluntary or non-voluntary. The court looks at the totality of the circumstances, including age, experience, background, intelligence, capacity to understand, warnings given, nature of the Fifth Amendment rights, consequences of waiving those rights, etc. Those safeguards are in place now. All you have to do is look at who's bringing this bill. The defense bar. What's the defense bar's job? To get their client off regardless, by hook or by crook. That's what the defense bar does. They will look for any excuse, any way possible, whether they use deception or not, to get their client off. So why are they bringing this bill? Because they want to get their clients off that commit serious crimes. They don't care about public safety. They want to get their client off. The defense bar is the one that's texting messages in here to members of this chamber, telling them what to say, telling them what to do. It's the defense bar because they want to get their clients off of everything. And they'll look for any loopholes they can, and this bill has a major, major loophole, many of them. I asked yesterday, what if it was your kid? What if it was your child that was kidnapped, and the only way to get him back was say a deceptive statement to the juvenile that might have information? What if it was your child that was murdered? Wouldn't you want the law enforcement to use every tool that they have in their tool belt to solve that crime? Again, colleagues, I ask for a no vote on this anti-law enforcement, anti-public safety, pro-criminal bill that puts criminals over victims. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, colleagues. First, I actually just want to respond to the immediate previous comments. I think we all come to our yes or no votes for various of informed reasons, and I would never think that someone voted against a bill for a text from the lobby, and I don't assume that anyone's going to vote for a bill because of a text from a lobby. But I was reflecting back on our debate from Tuesday, and it was long and it was intense, but that's what our discussions on important matters tend to be. That's what we do in this chamber. But I do remember towards the end of the debate, it was suggested that this bill says all law enforcement are liars. And that resonated with me, mostly because I don't think that's accurate, and I think it's a really risky statement to kind of let stand on the record. That I've never actually heard anyone who is a proponent of the bill say that. I heard a strong defense for the bill. I heard some thoughtful arguments against the bill, but I really don't think that there's a strong belief that this bill says all law enforcement are liars. I don't believe that, and I didn't hear that through the majority of the debate on the floor. And why I rise to push back on it was because I think that narrative exacerbates a divide between law enforcement and folks in communities across our state. And it's just not an accurate belief that should be, I think, supposed to be held by folks who support this bill. What this bill does, however, say, though, that in those cases where law enforcement does deceive a juvenile to get a confession, which we know has happened, we heard that in moving committee testimony, the bill protects that juvenile from having their words used against them in a court in a way that could, and has for some young people, do real damage to their lives for years. We were asked in the second reading debate to ponder what we as parents or as guardians would want to happen if our child was in grave danger. Wouldn't we want all tactics available to save them? A good question to ponder. I would ask us to ponder the flip side of that coin. Wouldn't you want your kid, who is in a scary situation, to not be led into a conversation that could weigh them down for the balance of their lives? that circumstance, depending on where your kid found themselves that particular afternoon, is both equally important to consider. We teach our kids from a really young age. I'm sure if you've been in a classroom lately, if you were in a classroom as a child, which I assume all of us were, we teach our kids to trust and respect law enforcement. We teach them to find someone in a uniform when they are in trouble and go to that uniform and ask for help. This is what we teach young kids. How then can we expect them to do the opposite, especially in a situation where they are scared and confused, to not trust everything that's coming out of a uniformed officer's mouth, and feel like they just need to say perhaps whatever the officer is telling them happened, or to say maybe just what they think the officer wants to hear for them to get back to their families. We're asking a lot of adults, even in interrogation, to balance the challenges of that scary situation, and then to expect a kiddo to be able to do that, I think is unfair. To me, this bill seeks to protect vulnerable kids in a pretty scary and difficult situation. And it encourages law enforcement, people who are good at their jobs, to not rely on a dishonest tactic in their interrogations. It also isn't about juvenile crime. It's about not deceptively getting a kid to admit to something that they didn't do, and then using that to convict them of a crime that they didn't commit. I don't think this sounds extreme or radical or offensive. I think it's just acknowledging that kids in these situations have been taught to believe cops, and then we're going to ask them under that scary and stressful situation to weigh if a cop is telling them the truth or not, when we've taught them to believe that cops tell them the truth. I think Senate Bill 23 is the right thing to do, and I ask for your aye vote.
Senator Phillips.
Good morning, Mr. President and colleagues. I wasn't going to speak on third reading because I said what I had to say. But then I started to hear some things that really compelled me to stand up. I am a parent. And like most parents, we always want the best for our kids. Most parents want to do well by their kids. So when we hear narratives like, I guess there was some discussion about police lie. I think that's what was said, and I can tell you that I don't believe in blanket statements like that. I don't believe in stereotyping people like that. When I think of law enforcement, I think of those who put their lives on the line to protect our community, our people, our property. And I know it's not easy. So at some point, we have to find a way to have greater balance when we're talking about policing and trust. Because this finger-pointing situation that I think is going on is not very helpful, and it's not very productive. All across this nation, people are trying to come together to make a resolution and to resolve things that we see are just not right. So I'm just encouraging us to really watch the words that we use. Because sometimes words can aggravate, demean, belittle, make you be shameful. I know that firsthand because of the color of my skin and my gender and some of the positions that I take. Doesn't make me a bad person. So I'm rising in support of this bill because I don't want to see any kid or child or juvenile be treated with not the level of fairness and dignity that they deserve. But the tone that we talk about, that we use when we're talking about police and victims, we need to be very, very careful about the messaging that we're sending, no matter if you're for it or against it. And I just want us all to be somewhat guarded because we are supposed to be the shining examples of integrity when it comes to making sure that we live in a community that's safe for all people. And that includes our law enforcement. It includes me. We just passed a law in last session about protecting lawmakers from harassment and intimidation. I think that's all I have to say on this, and I just hope that we can just be careful that we're not inciting fear in our community. Fear should not be a tactic to drive, public policy. We don't have to use fear. But we do need to work on building trust and collaboration and partnership. That's what we need to forge. Thank you.
Sarah Buckner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've been sitting over there in my seat debating if I was going to say anything. And I decided that I had to have the courage to say what is important for my Senate district and my House district and the whole state of Colorado. How can I sit here as a senator knowing that I am running Senate Bill 1 for community safety? I'm also going to be running some other bills to make our communities safer. And you know why I'm running those bills? Because I believe that we need our police behind us. This bill is not an anti-police bill, just as the bills I'm going to run are not anti-police bills. I'm sitting here thinking about what I teach my children and what I have taught my grandchildren and what most of my friends have taught their kids. We're trying to teach our kids to respect adults. So I believe that deception will undercut that trust. And somebody said earlier about they were a young person. Well, I'm an elder. I've been around a long time. And my brother-in-law is a police officer. My uncle was a police officer. And I know that there are tactics that are used by police officers But in this situation with young people who are so vulnerable, sometimes confused, I just believe that it is wrong to use deceptive practices. I also want to share with you what many parents have said out in my area. And I live in a really diverse Senate district. But so many of my parents who have had these deceptive acts used on their children, some of those kids have gone to jail and they were innocent. As a black woman with black children, I know that so many times what happens with the white kids doesn't happen with the black kids. And that's just a fact. And I'm not using color as an excuse here. Because, hey, there's black criminals, there's Latina criminals, there are white criminals, but what I'm saying is we have to have a better system. And some people have said, we don't need this bill. I think we need this bill because I know too many people who have been affected. I believe that this bill is going to support equity in the juvenile system because in the state of Colorado, children of color are vastly overrepresented in that system. According to the Colorado Department of Education, black students are almost 3 times more likely to be referred to law enforcement than white students for similar or same behaviors. Black youth are just 5% of Colorado's juvenile population, but they represent 16% of juvenile arrests, and they make up 19% of youth committed to the Department of Youth Services. You all know I'm this positive person who is always hoping for the best. And I want to ensure that there is a consistent approach to juvenile interrogation across the state that will help turn the tide against these shocking facts. Believe me, this is not an anti-police bill. I have too many friends who are police officers. And some of you reside in this chamber that I'm friends with who are police officers. So with that being said, I am in strong support of this bill.
Further discussion. Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to say, first of all, that I do greatly respect my fellow senators that just got up and spoke from Aurora. And I would agree with you. We need to be very careful about the message we are sending. And I agree with you. We need to work on building trust, collaboration, and partnership. Agree with you 100% on that. What I don't understand is this. Collaboration and trust, I believe you were speaking in terms with regard to citizens working with their law enforcement agencies. And I just want to say I have a lot of friends who are in the law enforcement career path as well. But if we're going to work on building trust, collaboration, and partnership, that trust, collaboration, and partnership needs to also exist with law enforcement. So when law enforcement came to us, and I'm thinking we all got this letter from the Fraternal Order of Police, when they came to us and said, and they're the ones who are the experts, they're the ones who have to deal with this. They came to us and they said, deception of a juvenile is not appropriate in every situation. They're agreeing with you, trying to collaborate. They said, but it's a critical tool in certain scenarios, providing safety and justice to crime victims and the general public. They went on to say, requiring agencies to have an evidence-based policy on this tactic would be a more balanced solution than an outright ban. Our response to them? No. Nope. We're not going to collaborate. We're not going to partner with you. We had an amendment yesterday that spoke about training, making changes. Let's collaborate. Let's partnership. Let's work together. Let's build trust. Because part of the message we're sending with this bill is that we don't trust law enforcement. Or at least we're not listening to them. So they went on to say, you know, they have concerns about lack of time and resources included in the legislation for training officers. Yet, voted down the amendment that talked about training. Oh, we passed that amendment. Well, that's good. Sorry. Sorry, misunderstood. I thought we voted what went down. Wasn't that the one we had the mess up on? No, excuse me. But anyways, so that's good. But still, at the same time, thank you. Thank you for telling me that. But still, at the same time, they're telling you that an outright ban is not good. So let's work on that collaboration and that building trust and that partnership with them. Let's listen to what they have to say, because that's equally as important. I'm a mom. I'm a grandmother. I have 6 grandsons. And I agree with the good senator from Vail that talks about, you know, we teach our children to trust the police. We also teach them to do right by others. So I agree that we need to work on building trust, collaboration, and partnership. We need to do that with our law enforcement agencies as well, who are in opposition to this bill. So I would ask for a no vote.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, thank you for your consideration, for listening to one another. That's the most important part of this work, right? So we actually listen to one another and have a debate and a dialogue as opposed to talking to the cameras. In the debate that we just had now, there was this idea put forward. Let's put victims first for once. I would submit to you for your consideration that victims are not served well when someone is falsely imprisoned for a crime they did not commit. There was another statement made in this debate and discussion this morning, recalling the summer of violence. Just to clarify in the record, the summer of violence was in 1993, not in 1992. But also, in 1992, there was no media coverage of the murder rates that took place, but there was a media hysteria in 1993. And in that special session and in the years following, we entered an era of mass incarceration. Those are the mistakes of the past that we are trying really diligently to avoid. And it's why I bring forward Senate Bill 23 for your consideration. Make no mistake, I brought forward this bill. My name is on it. And in committee, we heard from the real people who have been impacted by our current statutes, who underscore the need for Senate Bill 23. And the last thing I just want to name is that there was this idea raised that we need to hold people accountable when they lie to law enforcement. I would point you all to 18-8-111, false reporting to authorities. (18-8-306), attempt to influence a public servant, which specifically calls out by means of deceit, which is a class 4 felony. But what we heard in committee, we heard from the president of the NAACP, who shared with us that her Montbello church has frequent Faith in Blue events in order to build that trust between community and law enforcement. But she questioned how it would be possible to have faith in people who are permitted to deceive children. We heard from the director of CU Law School's Corey Wise Innocence Project. We heard from the executive director of the second largest police interrogation training center in the country. Who shared with us that the use of deception in interrogations is not only unnecessary, but harmful to the interviewer's credibility and strategy. We heard statistics and evidence that courts are not required to consider any evidence about the juvenile's mental state that would make them particularly vulnerable to deceptive interrogation. That the data from cases where a juvenile was convicted and then exonerated by DNA evidence prove that 38% of the juvenile exonerees gave false confessions. And in every single one of those cases, the courts found that that confession was voluntary. That's what's at the root of Senate Bill 23. Colleagues, we heard from Lorenzo Montoya, who was 14 years old when he was wrongfully convicted of murder and sentenced to life after hours of grueling and deceptive interrogation. He served nearly 14 years, half of his life, before the system finally realized that his confession was false and he was exonerated. He told the committee, those of us who, in the Senate Judiciary Committee, I felt like I was all alone in the middle of the ocean on a sinking ship. And what happened to me haunts me every day. We heard from his attorney, who explained that the police, in his case, told Lorenzo that fingerprints, shoe prints, and saliva proved he was guilty. And the safeguards that have been mentioned here in our debate. Lorenzo was given a Miranda warning. That didn't stop him from falsely confessing. His mother was in the room for part of his questioning. But that didn't stop him from falsely confessing. His confession was taped, and that didn't stop him from falsely confessing. The judge in his case considered whether his confession was voluntary, and even that didn't stop the false confession from being used against him in court. Colleagues, none of those safeguards that existed in statute stopped Lorenzo from being wrongfully convicted and serving 14 years for a crime he did not commit. One Lorenzo is too many. And that's the reason I bring forward Senate Bill 23 for your consideration, and I ask for an aye vote. Thank you, colleagues.
Having no further discussion, the motion before the body is the passage of Senate Bill 023 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Mr. Minority Leader, Senators Lundin, Scott, Priola, Simpson, Gardner, Cook, Janal, Liston, Heisey, Sonnenberg, Smallwood, Rankin, Woodward, Quorum, Kirkmeyer. With 18 aye votes, 16 no votes, 0 absent, and 1 excused, Senate Bill 023 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Moreno, Coleman, Lee, Rodriguez, Story, Buckner, General order, second reading of bills. Senator, Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 79 lay over until February 22nd.
The motion is to lay over Senate Bill 079 until 2/22. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and that bill will be laid over until February 22nd. General order, second reading of bills. Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of general orders, second reading of bills.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, the motion is adopted. The Senate resolve itself in the Committee of the Whole for consideration of general orders, second reading of bills. And Senator Moreno will take the chair.
The committee will come to order. Ms. Cole, will you please read the title to Senate Bill 78?
Senate Bill 78, Senators Kirkmeyer and Janal, concerning alternatives to health insurer prior authorization requirements for healthcare providers that achieve a specified approval rate on prior authorization requests.
Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 78 and the committee report from Health and Human Services.
To the committee report.
Do I have to move the committee?
No, just tell them about the committee
Oh,
report.
thank you.
Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The committee report, basically, we did have some amendments in the committee. They were amendments that we agreed upon with providers and insurers, and they were clarifying and helped us clean up the bill some.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is the adoption of the Health and Human Services Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee report is adopted. Further discussion on Senate Bill 78. Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have an amendment. Is that, am I doing it wrong?
There is an amendment on the desk. Ms. Cole, will you please read Amendment L009?
Amendment L009 by Senator Kirkmeyer, amend the health...
Senator Janal. Senator Janal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senate Bill 78 requires that health insurance carriers allow providers who have had a 95% approval rate of prior authorization requests over the past year to be exempt from prior authorization requirements for procedures, for testing, and for imaging. This is a product of a lot of work, a lot of stakeholder meetings with health insurers, providers, hospitals, pharmacists. Compromises were made, and the introduced version of this bill, which the good senator from Weld County had just explained, have allowed providers to provide an exemption from prior authorizations for drug benefits. That was one of the amendments part of the amendment that we took out in committee. And this issue is one I do care deeply about, but I understand that the concerns that were raised were very valid, and I accept this, and it's probably not the right vehicle for accomplishing this goal. So the good senator from Weld County will be offering an amendment to narrow the scope of prior authorization exemptions so it applies to a specific diagnosis, test, corresponding set of services by CPT code. And I support this thoughtful revision. It also adds more transparency. But we know from recent articles, recent research, that being of August 2021 in Health Affairs, that insurers, manufacturers, physicians, and patients together incur approximately $93 billion in costs across the country annually on implementing, contesting, and navigating utilization management. A 2019 survey found that in any given week, most physicians must contend with between 11 and 40 prior authorizations. 1/5 of physicians face more than 40 per week. And nearly 3/5, that's 59% of physicians, have staff members working exclusively on prior authorizations, with most staff spending between 10 and 20 hours per week on prior authorizations. Ultimately, the majority of services are approved, with 1/3 of physicians getting approved of 90% approval rating or more. Everybody stands to benefit from this bill if we pass, and if this bill passes. And it gives responsible providers a break. But the most important people that will benefit are patients. Patients will have a greater access to medical services they need in a more timely manner, and I ask for your aye vote on this bill.
Senator Kirkmeyer, will you please move the amendment, then proceed to discussion? Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move L009.
Please proceed, Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. L009 is an amendment that, again, we've been working with both the insurers and the providers to add some more clarity and definition to the bill and to the law. We're adding in language with regard to what is a same health care service, and that with regard to the floor and the prior authorizations, that it would be related to the same health care service. We're also adding in a definition for what health care service means. And we are also adding in a definition and cleaning up some language with regard to private utilization review organizations.
Is there further discussion on Amendment L009? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L009. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. To the bill, Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I would just like to talk a little bit about the bill in its formation now. When this law first was passed in 2019, there's a section of the law that says the insurers may provide for a prior authorization exemption if the providers meet an 80% threshold. The reality is, over the course of the last 3 years, we haven't really gotten to an exemption of prior authorizations. There's been some other programs that were in place, like incentive type programs, but we never really got to where we were trying to get to, which was, again, to make sure that the patients have access to care in a more timely manner. Prior authorizations is a management process used by insurance companies to determine if a prescribed product or service will be covered. Sometimes this takes a long time for this to occur. Again, making it a lengthy process before the patient can get to the product or the service that they need. So all this is doing is we changed the may to a shall. We increased the threshold from 80% to 95%. We also added another threshold, a floor of the number of prior authorizations that a provider must do specific to a service to again make sure that we have plenty of safety nets and guardrails in place. And then we have also added, not only is there the option to exempt providers from prior authorization, again, giving more timely access and availability to patients, but we added in that they could do incentive type programs as long, again, as it addressed the timeliness, or any other innovative type program that they could come up with. So again, what we're trying to get to here is to ensure that patients have timely access to their health care. With that, I ask for an aye vote.
Senator Smallwood. Senator Smallwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and colleagues, thank you for this. You know, first and foremost, I do want to thank the bill sponsors for bringing this forward. There are few people, mercifully, in the building who have to deal with this topic in their lives outside of the legislature, and I am one of those people. So for anybody to stand up here and say that prior authorizations, or when it's dealing with pharmaceuticals, quantity limitations, step therapy requirements, those sorts of things aren't challenging for patients, aren't sometimes disruptive, right, in their lives. We're used to everything being quick and immediate, and when somebody is trying to put sand in the gears or gum things up to what our day had planned, we find it frustrating. So I commend the bill sponsors for at least pursuing something like this, because that is really what we're dealing with here, is something that patients have said for decades can be frustrating. It can be a hindrance. It can be an annoyance. But colleagues, I'm here to tell you that even though I'm very, very proud of the work that our colleagues have done on this, I know they've done a lot of stakeholdering around it, conceptually, it's something that you still probably should consider voting no on, mostly because what I hear almost all of you say when you come to the well to talk about health care, health insurance, is that the biggest problem that we have is not that it's frustrating or necessarily confusing, or that we can't get the care quite as quickly as we want. What we hear in this well is that the problem is costs. That is the problem, costs. And so that is the number one reason why I think you should really consider voting against the bill as it's written today, is because it is going to raise costs. That is proven anecdotally by the fact that, for example, no ERISA plan is required to abide by the laws that we're even dealing with here. So we are in Title 1016, which is health insurance. These are insurance laws. We're talking about what our Commissioner of Insurance can manage within the state of Colorado. But as you know, colleagues, the vast majority of our citizens aren't covered under policies that our Division of Insurance manages. Way more people are covered under ERISA plans, self-funded plans, or Medicaid or Medicare or all of the other systems, TRICARE, VA, and that sort of thing. So when you hear, again, well-intentioned words from the well saying this is going to help everybody, I'm not exactly sure I agree with that. I think this might help some people with their frustrations, but certainly not all people. And colleagues, I would argue not anywhere close to even most people in our state would benefit or be hurt by this law, because it doesn't pertain to them. This is only Title 10, colleagues. So it's going to raise costs, number one. Second, I'm not crazy about the way that it was thought out in some areas. So why is this going to raise costs? Colleagues, at the end of the day, I know this is going to surprise a few of you, but sometimes physicians or prescribers or hospitals make mistakes. I know, hard to believe that a physician at some point might make a mistake. These processes that are built in are proven to save costs because it catches when providers make mistakes. When they are prescribing care that is outside of normal standards, outside of normal protocol. Perhaps it's experimental and not proven for these procedures. This is why, at least in my opinion, a big part of the introduced bill was changed, because it used to include prescribers in the introduced version of this bill. I'm very, very grateful to the bill sponsors for removing that, because I will tell you, payers catch all kinds of errors that are made on prescription drugs. Interactions that are dangerous or life-threatening, contraindications. There's all kinds of things that you want another set of eyes on this, particularly in the world of prescription drugs. But that part's removed from the from the bill now, mercifully. But now we have to ask ourselves, are the providers themselves immune from these sorts of errors, mistakes? I don't think they are, colleagues. I think they're still human and they still make mistakes. This is why plans that don't have to abide by the current laws in Title X, like for example, I'm sure none of you in the room are covered under our Cigna self-funded plan here at the state of Colorado, right? Nobody's actually chosen that plan, right? No, some of you have? Okay. That plan has prior authorization built into it. If you're covered under that plan, there is nothing that says we have to abide by Title X. It's an ERISA plan. It's governed by the Department of Labor and the federal government. Yet the DPA here in our state chose to keep prior authorizations as part of your benefit plans here when they didn't have to. Why would they have done that, colleagues? Why would our friends at DPA purposefully put us through these gymnastics? Why would they put us through these frustrations when there's no requirement for them to do so? Because it keeps costs down. It's exactly right. It keeps costs down, and they know that. Otherwise, why would they put us through this? Because they hate us? I don't think so. It's a prudent thing for somebody designing an employee benefits plan around health insurance to do. They didn't have to do it, but they chose to do it, and I will, short of guaranteeing you, I will wager you that when this law passes, the ERISA plans that are out there are going to continue to keep prior authorization in place because it simply makes good financial sense. Now, I will give you, you have to balance it, right? You don't want to upset your members so much so that people don't want to buy health insurance from you or have a health plan through you. So that's why we already have all these rules around the expedite. We had the huge discussion last year about how expedited needs to be when somebody needs an emergency procedure, when somebody needs an emergency prescription drug. Those who were involved in the PDAB discussion last year know all about those. So, colleagues, we don't need to beat this point to death. It is simply proven that prior authorization saves money. Otherwise, everybody, particularly ERISA plans, would have long gotten rid of it. Medicaid would get rid of it. But they don't. And why don't they? You know the answer to that. So a couple of other pieces that I think really need to have been vetted out a little bit more thoroughly is something like the 95% number. What we heard in committee and what you'll read in the bill is that if a physician has 95% success in their prior approvals, that they shouldn't have to go through prior auth anymore. And colleagues, I will ask you, who else has stood up here and talked about 95% being an acceptable threshold for anything? Have we ever looked at airline pilots who have successfully landed 95% of aircraft and said, you know what, those are great pilots. They no longer need the recurrent training that pilots are required to do because 95% of their last landings haven't killed anybody. When have we looked at electricians who have successfully not burned homes down 95% of the time and said, you know what, those people don't need any continuing education anymore because 95% of the time, those homes are still standing. When have we looked at surgeons with a 95% success ratio in not killing patients as being somebody that we should hold up as the gold standard? Only 5% unsuccessful surgeries. These folks should get a pass. They should not need to do continuing education in our state. Colleagues, we don't think like that. 95% has never been a threshold that makes sense to anybody. So between the fact that this is going to raise costs, I would say that most of us would consider 95% a pretty low bar for success in the world. And the fact that this, colleagues, this isn't going to impact people. I sound like a broken record, I know, because every time we bring these bills that are going to impact this small slice of Coloradans that are actually governed under our Division of Insurance and say, this is going to change the world. Think of what this is going to be like for a provider. So again, because many of you are covered under our Cigna plan, this bill passes, eliminates prior authorization from Surgeon X. Because Surgeon X, she's done such a great job that only 4 of her last 100 surgeries have killed somebody, for example. Okay, that's being hyperbolic. But so Surgeon X has a patient, and now we've passed this law that says prior authorizations don't matter for Surgeon X anymore. And Surgeon X is going to say, well, usually with Cigna, we have to do prior authorizations, but now we passed this law in Colorado, so we don't have to do that anymore. Oh, but wait, are you, Mr. Patient, Mrs. Patient, are you on a self-funded plan? And what is the patient going to say? What is the patient going to say when we ask them whether or not they're on a self-funded plan? The answer is, I have absolutely no blooming idea. Because patients don't know that. Look on your ID card for those of you that are with Cigna on the state of Colorado's plan. Show me on your ID card where it says this is an ERISA plan, this is a self-funded plan. Because my assertion is that you're not going to find that. And neither is the doctor's office. So now we've told doctors you don't have to do prior authorization, but they don't know for which patients they do and for which patients they don't. There's no way. So just logistically and tactically, colleagues, we need to figure out that problem. Because otherwise, what is something that is well-intentioned, and I am 100% behind my 2 colleagues here, that this is a well-intentioned piece of legislation, no question about it. But it's simply not going to work because physicians cannot determine by meeting with a patient whether or not they're on a fully insured or ERISA plan. At least not today. Either that or we have to amend the bill that requires health plans to put a big stamp on all the ID cards that says ERISA plan. Right? Otherwise, how in the world are physicians going to know? So, and candidly, I don't even know why we're having this conversation. Because if you pass this, the odds of this bill not being vetoed by the governor is, in my opinion, infinitesimally small. Our governor established the Office of Saving People Money on Healthcare. Hello, Office of Saving People Money on Healthcare. We have a bill that is not going to save people money on health care. It is going to marginally make things more convenient for patients seeking health care. Some patients, some of the time. So when an office has been established for this purpose, and the governor has told us that the governor is no longer going to sign bills that raise health care, and we have a bill, Senate Bill 78, that is, again, very well-intentioned, going to make things slightly less inconvenient for patients, but that's not what that office is designed. That's not the promise we heard from the governor. So I guess I should probably rescind my comment and say, you can probably vote however you want, because I don't think the bill is going anywhere long-term regardless. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Gonzalez.
As someone who doesn't need to go and bend down just to be heard, can I just move that the good senator from Douglas Parker from Smallwoodville speak like this into the mic all of the time?
Further discussion. Senator Kirkmeyer.
Really? Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's see. A 2019 survey by the Regulatory Relief Coalition, a group of national physician specialty organizations, found that in any given week, most physicians, 42%, must contend with between 11 and 40 prior authorizations. 1/5 of respondents faced more than 40 per week. Nearly 3/5, 59% of physicians have staff members working exclusively on prior authorization, with most staff spending between 10 to 20 hours per week on prior authorization. Providers stated, prior authorization has become a perfunctory exercise that creates unnecessary delays in a patient's access to care. So in all of our discussions, at least while I have been here, it's not just about affordability. It has been about access, timely access, and availability. The good senator from Parker is correct. There are a lot of plans that already cover this. It's not going to cover everybody in the state of Colorado. Does that mean we shouldn't help the other over 40% of the people who are not on IRSA plans? Does that mean we should just disregard it? No. Prior authorizations have a place, but so do the opportunity to relieve physicians of prior authorizations, exempt them, or incentivize them to make sure and get it correct every time. This bill has several safeguards in it, several safety nets. We improved upon what occurred in 2019. So again, taking the patients in mind by giving them timely access and availability to their health care. So I urge a aye vote on the amendment and on the bill. We already did the amendment, right? I urge an aye vote on the bill.
Further discussion on Senate Bill 78. Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 78. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 78 is adopted. Madam Assistant Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
The motion is for the committee to rise and report. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee will rise and report.
The Senate will come. Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee has met and had one bill under consideration. Ms. Cole, will you please read the report?
Mr. President, your committee of the whole begs leave to report it has had under consideration the following attached bills, being the second reading thereof, and makes the following recommendations thereon. Senate Bill 78 is amended, passed on second reading, and ordered, engrossed, and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of the
Motion is the adoption of the committee of the whole report. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, the committee of the whole report is adopted. Senate Bill 078 is amended, passed on second reading, ordered, engrossed, and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Consideration of resolutions. Will the clerk please read the title to SJR 002?
Senate Joint Resolution 002, Senator Donovan, Representative McCormick, concerning approval of water project revolving fund eligibility list administered by the Colorado Water Resources and Power Development Authority.
Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Joint Resolution 2.
Is there any discussion? Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this is our annual process of bringing transparency into the water projects that we fund across the state. So if you're wondering what's happening in your neck of the woods, take a look at the resolution. This legislation was initially capitalized by, we transferred $7.2 million, and we've just been using that money over and over and over to get federal funds in a match to fund these projects across the entire state. To date, we've done 332 loans that have been executed for nearly $774 million. I think this is just an important data point at this time when we're starting to establish a lot of revolving loans with one-time dollars to see what these can do over the lifetime of a project. It's significant, and I think it's a really responsible way for us to use taxpayer dollars. And so I ask for your support on Senate Joint Resolution 2. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Joint Resolution 002. Are there any no votes? With 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Joint Resolution 002 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Mr. Minority Leader, Senator Simpson, Senator Moreno, Senator Cook, Rodriguez, Gonzalez, Bridges, Huckes Lewis, Lee, Buckner. Please add the President. Governor's appointments. Will the clerk please read the appointments on the Uninsured Employee Board?
Member of the Uninsured Employee Board for a term expiring September 1st, 2024, John Alvino of Centennial, Colorado, to serve as a representative of labor organizations appointed.
Senator Rodriguez. Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of the committee reports for the Uninsured Employer Board.
The motion is for the confirmation of those listed. Is there discussion? Seeing none, the motion is confirmation of the governor's appointments on the Uninsured Employer Board. Are there any no votes? With 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 1 excused, John Alvino is appointed and confirmed to that board. Members, in other business before the Senate, will the Senate choir please convene so that we may sing a happy birthday to Senator Moreno. Today is his birthday.
Ready?
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Senator. Happy birthday to you.
Members, I hope that in the weeks to come, the Capitol Choir will convene to practice a little bit. The Senate chambers is open in the afternoons. Committee reports.
February 16, 2022, Committee on Judiciary, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 57 be amended as follows, and as so amended be referred to the Committee on Appropriations with favorable recommendations. February 16, 2022, Committee on Judiciary, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 115 be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation, and with a recommendation that it be placed on the consent calendar. February 16, 2022, Committee on Judiciary, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 92 be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation, and with a recommendation that it be placed on the consent calendar. February 16, 2022, Committee on Judiciary, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 50 be amended as follows, and as so amended be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation, and with a recommendation that it be placed on the consent calendar.
Announcements. Senator Cook.
Gracias, El Presidente. I request a moment of personal privilege / announcement.
Granted.
Gracias. The Senate Republican Hispanic Caucus will be meeting upon adjournment. Everyone is welcome. Both sides. You don't have to be Hispanic to attend, but I encourage all Hispanics to attend the Senate Republican Caucus. Original Puerto Rican food will be provided in 352, so please come by. We are having pork shoulder, rice and beans, Cuban sandwiches, but I'm sure they stole them from Puerto Rico. We're having sweet plantains and fried plantains up in 352. If you have a committee upon adjournment, please stop up, grab food, and take it with you. But I would encourage all to attend the Senate Republican Hispanic Caucus for lunch, and it's room 352. Thank you, El Presidente. Margaritas later.
Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the Judiciary Committee, we are taking Bill 5 off of the calendar today, and we're going to bump the start time of the Judiciary Committee from 1:30 to a loose 1:45, and hope there's some leftovers from the Puerto Rican caucus.
I think you have to meet upon adjournment of morning committees.
Or what?
I think you're meeting upon adjournment of morning committees.
Oh, it's an afternoon committee.
Yeah, but you're meeting upon adjournment.
Announcements. Senator Stenzinger.
Wait a minute, I need clarification.
Because
Thank you, Mr. President. The Senate Education Committee will meet this afternoon, presumably at 1:30, but after the morning committees are adjourned, and we will hear two bills, Senate Bill 121 and Senate Bill 71. Thank you.
Certainly.
Let me correct a misleading announcement. We have the adjournment committees from the morning that need to complete, so we will meet upon the completion of those committees. Pardon for the confusion.
Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. A variation on a theme, Senate Agricultural and Natural Resources will meet upon adjournment of Senate State Veterans and Military Affairs.
Senator Buckner.
Thank you, Mr. President. This morning, we had the Colorado Home Educators of Colorado group here, and 4 of the young ladies were on the Senate floor, and I wanted to acknowledge them, even though they're not here right now. They're taking a tour of the Capitol, and the parent who was with them was Rachel Gates, and she wanted me to let you all know how much they enjoyed observing the Senate in action. And this Homeschool Educators of Colorado's group wants to tell you how impressed they were with what happened this morning. So thank you.
Senator Gonzalez.
Gracias, presidente. Para todos estos republicanos que vienen del partido Bueno, para todos estos hispanos que vienen del Partido Republicano, ojalá que les gusten esta comida que les van a servir. Vamos a hablar acerca de del raíz de los margaritas después, pero I want to thank Senator Cook for his work, and look forward to eating some yummy Puerto Rican grub. Colleagues, for those of you who are serving on the Senate State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee, we will be meeting in 15 minutes in the old Supreme Court. We will be hearing Senate Bill 76, 42, 73, 111, and 81. Thank you very much. We'll see you then.
Further announcements. Senator Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. President. A moment of personal privilege, please.
Granted.
I just want to make sure I get my name in the hat for the popcorn eating contest.
Assistant Majority Leader Fields.
Are you going to adjourn before I say my amendment? Did he already say that? Just say your thing.
Make the motion to adjourn.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate adjourn until tomorrow, which would be Friday, February the 18th.
You have heard the motion. The motion is that the Senate stand in adjournment until 2/18/22 at 0900 hours. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. The Senate will stand in adjournment.